Hello, EduMagicians. Welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
I'm AJ Bianco, host of Reflect Ed, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Just like the show you're listening to now, shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, EduMagicians, and welcome back to another episode of the EduMagic podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I'm joined with Dr. Shani Challenor, and she is going to be sharing about how to be an effective student teacher. We are both super passionate about raising up the next generation of educators of excellence, and I'm really pleased to have her on the show today sharing her expertise and wisdom and practical tips for you student teachers out there. So turn up the volume and get those notes ready to go. Dr. Shani, it is awesome to have you on the show today. Can you please share a little bit about yourself and what brought you into education?
Sure. Thank you so much, Doctor, for having me today. It's definitely a pleasure. So I am currently a special education teacher of a self-contained class. And what brought me to education was really my love for dance. I was working at an after-school program, and a lot of the kids needed help with their schoolwork, and it just kind of evolved. And they were like, you should be my classroom teacher, but I didn't think that I was quote unquote smart enough to be a teacher. And so that was never in my mind. I ended up, getting my bachelor's in psychology and education, and then my master's in special education, and then grateful enough to be able to finish my doctorate degree in interdisciplinary education, where I studied response to intervention and teachers' implementations and concerns during the pandemic, because it was done virtually. Yes. But one message that I want to get out, because I hear so many people say that college is not for them. And, if you have a unique gift, like if you do nails, then maybe a traditional college, right, is not for you, because that's a booming market. You can be very successful, but you probably don't need to go to, a university, but you need to go to, a school who focuses on your trade. That's different. But when it's someone who is not sure what they want to do in life, I think college is perfect for those people, because when you take all those different classes, you really get to learn about different topics, and then something might stick with you. And I always tell people, try to focus on the liberal arts credits first if you're not sure, because that gives you a really broad experience, and you don't lose your credits. But college is for you. College, if you want to graduate from college, is for you. That was the advice my mother gave to me, Hazel Challenor, and if she wouldn't have said that to me, it would not have resonated with me. But if you want to go to college, you can be successful in college. There's there are tricks to it, and and tips, and with the right support team, you can be successful. I always say I was more successful in college than any other part of my academic career.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah, I love what your mom said. If you want it to be, college can be for you, and having those necessary supports. You had talked about having a support team. Who was on that team for you?
Well, definitely my mom. I am, I'm faith driven. So there was a lot of praying nights, right? My family, my professors, I have been so blessed and so honored just to meet professors who just stuck by me. And through undergrad and with my master's and then with my doctorate. So my professors as well, friends, sometimes you have to, just call them. And my cohort, we were really, I still speak to a few of them, and we were just really, supportive of each other. Had the group text going, and okay, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Because when I was in college, everything was in person. So it was a different type of learning happening, because you were going to student teaching in the morning, but then you had your class at night.
Oh, wow. That must have been tough.
It was challenging, but I always say that if it's not challenging, then is it really your passion? Because if something comes too easy for you, then you have to step it up a notch, right? Like that's what we do in teaching. Like if we're teaching a lesson and the students are getting it, it needs to be elevated. Not completely changed, but we need to challenge them more. So I thought about it the same way.
Dr. Challenor, we haven't even gotten into our questions yet. And what's really resonated with me is when you said, if it's not challenging, it's not a passion. That really spoke to me today because, whenever we're talking about upping our lessons and upping our game in the classroom, that is so true. We have to reach students where they are, but then, give them that challenge, that little push there to keep learning and keep growing. Thank you for sharing that.
You're so welcome.
So today's lesson, today's episode is all about being an effective student teacher. And many of our student teachers are either starting this week or next week. What are some things that student teachers can do today, but to prepare for their student teaching experience? Even if it's like a week away, or maybe they just started, or perhaps there's some juniors listening in, they're getting this sneak peek on student teaching. Yeah. What are some things that they can do before they student teach to really help them in the classroom?
Well, the first thing I would say is first to breathe and relax. I remember being super nervous, right? And now I feel like technology is on our side. So you can literally YouTube, if you're teaching second grade, if you're doing student teaching in a second grade classroom, YouTube some videos, right? And YouTube some second grade lessons so So after you relax, you need to look at the standards. I think that's important because you want to know what the students should be learning. And you want to kind of know the sequence, right? So, because you may have to plan your lesson. So if they're doing, character traits in October, then your lesson is in November. You should be able to start kind of thinking, well, we should be around here by then. So definitely relax, look at the standards, and think about how you're going to present yourself as a student teacher. Student teaching was one of the most difficult experiences of my life because not until now, there's no guidebook, right? So you're going in it blindly, but this is one of the biggest, without this, you can't graduate. So you want to do well, you want to do good. So relax, know your standards, and also think about how you want to present yourself as a student teacher. So yes, you are a student teacher, but you are looked at as a professional by those children and by the correct, teacher, advising teacher. So some situations might be difficult, but that's going to happen in real life when you get hired and you have a co-teacher. So you're going to have to learn how to maneuver around those difficult situations. I'll give an example. I had one of my advising, teachers who I was in the class with. She was a control freak. And she wanted everything her way, which I understand because general education teachers are trained that way. They're trained that they are running the classroom. Special education teachers are trained a little different. So when you're in the room and this person wants to do everything, I let her do whatever she wanted to do, but I found my place. And my place was with those kids. So while she's working with the whole group, I'm going table by table. I'm taking little notes. Oh, this student is not understanding how to multiply. So I want to work with them on multiplication. And then by the end of that lesson, I had 8 students' names who needed more support. And when, she was working with some other students, I kind of pulled those students. So I went to each table and I just worked with them. So you just got to find your place with still being respectful.
I like that. So finding your place in the classroom and being respectful to that lead teacher, because as a student teacher, you are a guest in that classroom space.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
It's like going to someone, when you go to a family's home or a friend's home, they're having like a cookout or something, right? So you don't know really what they need help with, but they need help with something. Everybody needs help when they're having an event.
Oh, yeah.
So you may be part of the setup crew. You may end up serving food. You may be, have to just say hello to some guests, or they may need some more water, or you may be part of the cleanup crew. But no matter what you do, is going to be effective and it's needed. But then you're not stepping on the toes of the host.
All right. So before they student teach, I love this first one. Relax.
Yes.
Breathe.
Breathe.
Yes.
Woosah.
Um, watch some YouTube videos of classes and classrooms in your grade level or subject area. I never thought of that one, Shanae. That's a fantastic one. Because when we were student teaching back in the day, there wasn't such a thing as
No,
YouTube where
it
you
was
could
not.
just Google a classroom and see what it's like.
I wish it was.
I wish there was too. Um, reading the standards for your class, your grade level, subject area, and you could find those on your statewide websites. Like here in PA, it's the PDE SAS site. You can go ahead and find those standards. And I love how you said, look to see what they'll be learning later on in the year. So you can kind of start to introduce a few topics or look to see what they've already learned and where they're going in their learning trajectory.
Because what happens is, student teachers, sometimes I know it can be intimidating, but you want to know your stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if they're asking you, you want to know that a second grader is not dealing with decimals, right? So
Right.
you really want to go in as informed as you can. And you never know, like, this could set you up. I know so many people who've gotten jobs from student teaching, like somebody else on the team, they were retiring the next year. And they were like, oh, this student teacher was amazing. They knew the standards. Or never say, I don't know. Say, let me look that up. Or can I get back to you? But you don't want to say, I don't know. So the more, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready.
I am writing that one down. Let me look that up. Instead of saying, I don't know. Let me look that up. Let me look into that. That's
Right.
a great way to put
If
that.
you say, I don't know, it's almost like you're saying, I don't care.
Oh, yes. That's a great point.
Right? Like, would you allow your students to say, I don't know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I let them try to figure it out and work on it. I mean, you might not know yet, but you're going to figure it out.
See, that's different, right? Then I'd rather say, I don't know at this moment, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find this out. But just to say a blanket, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to show more passion. The passion could be there, but it has to be, the other person has to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a difference there and those phrases.
Right.
One other strategy you shared before they student teach is think about how you're going to present yourself as a student teacher. Yes, you're a student, but you're also a teacher and you need to present yourself as the professional that you are.
Correct.
And then the last one, being respectful. I think, you had mentioned being respectful to the host teacher, but also being respectful for any co-teachers or specialists or, teachers that do the art, the music, the gym, the principal, the administrative assistant. Yes, exactly. Exactly. All right, let's move into, we're starting to student teach. What are some effective practices for student teachers as they step into their role as a student teacher? They're in the classroom. What else can they be doing to really stand out?
For one thing, you have to go dressed as your teacher.
Mm-hmm.
This is not you going to your class in college or your course in college. You have to dress for the job that you want as if you already have it.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that.
So it can't be, when I become a teacher, I'm going to dress this way. No. My school actually had we weren't allowed to wear certain things. And that really made it easy. And, I didn't even have to think about it, but a lot of schools don't do that. Shout out to York College in Queens. So they made sure that we dress professional all the time. So you want to make sure that you're walking in as if you're the lead teacher, right? As if you're the co-teacher. So you want to look, because that's what people see first. And the students need to see you that way as well. Now, if there's if the school has a dress down code, on Fridays, then you can kind of see the culture and the climate of the building. But for the most part, you need to be dressed up, even if your teacher is not, even if your lead teacher is not, because guess what? They already have the job. They're there. They know where they're going to be the next 20-something years, So you want to make sure that you're coming in looking very professional. Mm-hmm. Another tip that I have, don't be afraid to communicate with your lead teacher. So saying things like, whatever you need, just let me know. Right? And if you see that sometimes it can be very overwhelming. I don't care if the person's been teaching for 10, 15 years. The first week of school, It's overwhelming, right? And sometimes they just may need your help by throwing things in the garbage. It sounds bizarre, but I remember the class I was in, all the kids were bringing in, notebooks. So just, make their notebook pile look a little neater. Go help the student that's having a hard time opening the bag. You may have to carry bags from wherever you pick the students up to the classroom. So you don't want to have to ask them every second what they need help with, but because if you're helping the students, then you're helping the teacher.
Yes, absolutely. If you're helping the students, you're helping the teacher. I'm writing that one down too. I got a lot of notes here. Yes, I love that one. What else should they be doing during their student teaching?
Trying to follow the flow of the teacher, like in the classroom. You don't ever want to interrupt, right? So you need to know what the bathroom rule is, because you don't want the teacher to be teaching and then you're like, oh, excuse me, can so-and-so go to the restroom? Like, you don't want to do that, right? So you want to be able to, if there's only 2 people out, then you have to see that there's 2 people out, and that's what you tell that other student. No, you can't go right now. You whisper it, and you kind of support it that way. You never want to interrupt. And I know it sounds bizarre, but I've seen it happen a lot. The lesson is getting interrupted by the, student teacher or another guest in the room. And the teacher's like, what's going on here? Like, so just pay attention to how things are going. And then you may have a teacher, a lead teacher who tells you exactly what they need. Mm-hmm. And then right? Yeah. So all the experiences are going to be different, but try not to interrupt the learning. That's like really important.
Oh, I like that. Yes. So the first few days of student teaching, it's really important to know, you had mentioned the flow of the classroom, routines, and those procedures that are going on in the classroom. So it's important to be an observer, have a listening ear, ask those questions. So when it's time for you to kind of step out of that observer role and you're stepping into more of a teaching role or a facilitator role, you have a clear understanding of what is expected of those students, what the routines are, and the procedures for things like going to the bathroom, going to the nurse, and all the other procedures that happen during the day.
Right, because what if the teacher says, oh, can you take this over really quick? I'm just going to go talk to the student right here.
Exactly, yes.
But if you're not paying attention, you don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah, and that happens for during student teaching, or they might be called down to the office or something like that, and you have to take over as a student teacher. That might happen.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other tips for during student teaching where they can stand out?
Don't be afraid to be creative.
Oh, I was hoping you'd say that.
I am a trained dancer, and it's very interesting. I always thought that that would be my career, right? Dancing. I'm trained in ballet, African, tap, jazz, modern, liturgical, hip hop, and that was my love. It still is. But the fact that I get to combine it with teaching is more amazing, right? So if you have a unique talent, which I didn't think teaching dancing was unique until teachers in my building were like, I don't know how to, it was like a big deal for them.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to use that. If you see that the students are bored with the call and response, create one and ask the teacher, can I try this out?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times they're at home Googling new call and responses.
You're right.
Right? So you just don't be, if you sing, if you draw, no matter what your talent is, if you're very dramatic, if you're in theater, don't be afraid to put those in the classroom, because that's going to make you stand out. Yeah. My first teaching job ever, I thought I was going for I was interviewing for a classroom position. It wasn't posted. I just sent my resume. They called me in for an interview. And the first thing that they noticed on my resume was that I was a trained dancer. And they said, oh my gosh, we need someone like that here. And I was hired on the spot. So don't be afraid to highlight your gifts in the classroom. Don't be afraid. And even as a student teacher, I was really fortunate that, I would go to them and I would say, hey, can I just try a little for their cool down? Can I do like 4 different moves with them? And they loved it. And they told me once I left, they still did it. They would still do those moves, So don't be afraid to shine. It's okay. Use your gift. They don't have to be departmentalized, right? Like dancing is not just for dance. It can be in the classroom. It can be in church. It can be at your family reunion or whatever. Like everything can kind of be in a melting pot. And that's what makes you stand out. When you put all your gifts together and you make it work, because nobody else can do that. Because it's your
Right.
gift, right?
Only you can do that. Exactly. There are so many ways that you mentioned that student teachers can stand out during their placement. Dress professionally. That is so important. Make sure you know the dress code for your school and for your ed department might have a dress code that you need to also adhere by. Communicate with your lead teacher. I love what you had mentioned. Just let me know whatever you need. And it could be a small task to a larger task. Just be available. And what you had said about if you're helping students, you're helping the teacher, and that was so spot on. One, it was focused on students. I love that piece. And then by helping them, you're also assisting the teacher. That is so key by taking on that mindset of him helping out students, and I'm also helping out the teacher in the same way. Knowing the procedures, the routines within the classroom, and use your gifts. Use the gifts that you uniquely have and bring that into the classroom. Let your co-op know, like, hey, I'd like to try this out, or is it okay if I try out this new technique, or I'd like to, like you had mentioned, do a cool down with these 4 moves. One of my student teachers, she plays the ukulele, so she tried putting that into the classroom for a morning meeting, which was super cool. So let's transition into, we've done during student teaching, we've done before student teaching. Now our student teaching is coming to an end. Maybe it's a 7-week, 8-week, 14-week placement. What are some ways that as student teaching wraps up and we look forward to our job, right, our first job, what are some ways that they can continue to be an effective student teacher as they wrap up student teaching and look to their future?
So one thing that I think happens, we forget to take kind of notes on what we did in our experiences. And those notes could end up on our resume. Well, they should end up on our resume. Because you could have been asked to, you never know, lead a meeting or, teach, work in a small group. Those things need to be on your resume. And student teaching is not something that should just have one description on your resume, right? It should be in depth, because if it wasn't, then it shows you didn't do much. So that, make sure you're taking notes, and then you're adding that to to your resume. I like feedback. I'm not afraid I love when my principal comes in and I get that constructive feedback. Maybe ask your teacher, is there anything I could do better?
Yeah.
Yes. You can maybe even make a form and put in an envelope if you don't want it to be just a one-on-one conversation. And I'm sure that they would be willing to do that. And sometimes if you have more than one, if your class switches or whatever the case is, then you give it to everyone. And the fact that you're asking for feedback is just going to be mind-blowing to them, right? And it's going to help you, but it also helps you stand out, because that's who people want in their schools. That's who principals, that's who administrators want. Yeah. People who are not afraid to have constructive criticism. So definitely take notes, so you know what you did. It can go on your resume, and ask for feedback.
Dr. Shani, when you had mentioned the importance of getting feedback, criticism, and glows and grows, or whatever we want to call that, our good friend Geneva Rodriguez posted on Instagram this morning. You need both criticism that's helpful, and you also need those or constructive criticism, and the shout outs, because it takes both rain and water for a flower to grow, and that's important for us as teachers too. So I thought that was very poignant for your conversation about asking for feedback.
Come into the end, and you need to do a self-evaluation too, right? Like take notes, like, what did I see here that I don't want to do? What did I see that I do that I would want to do? Because sometimes we pick up on other people's habits and we don't realize it. And you want to make sure that everything you do is with good intent, and it's you. It's pure. It's not just because someone else did it. And just make sure, honestly, that you are 100% there, and people can see your passion, and give yourself a round of applause, because no matter how many mistakes you made, okay, I have some interesting things that happened to me student teaching, but I never gave up. And when you get to the end, you really want to self-reflect and give yourself credit. Don't beat yourself up. We're in a profession where we beat ourselves up all the time, and unfortunately, we're not able to get as much accolades as we deserve. And that makes you feel like you're not doing a really good job. But you got to pat your own self on the back. You have to encourage yourself and just reflect on what a good job you did. And if you feel you didn't do a good job, then you can grow and glow for that. You have the summer to kind of reboot, or a week, or whatever it is. And don't be afraid to get some resources. A lot of times, someone was just telling me that somebody needed it was a photo, and the person needed a ladder, but the ladder, they were standing on the ladder and didn't realize it. Like, sometimes we have resources right underneath us and we don't use it and we don't realize it. So definitely use your resources as you reflect.
That's a great one. Use your resources, continue to grow as an educator, because one of the best things about being a teacher is we continue to keep growing and learning. It's something that's never done.
Right. And also your first year, because I know at the end of your time student teaching, and if you have a job offering or you're thinking about it, it is okay to possibly be a substitute teacher, or, just keep your mind open about what job you apply for or what you might be offered. Don't be closed-minded because, like, being a substitute was my greatest experience. I learned so much, and I learned so much from student teaching, but I hear so many people say, I want my own classroom, and I understand that, but it takes a lot of work, right? So if you do have a position available where you're getting your own classroom, don't stress out so much about the way the classroom looks. Focus on your classroom management. Focus on having amazing lessons. Focus on those things. Focus on being an effective teacher and not just having things look so good.
I think that leads us into the substitutes or sunflowers piece that we did with, I want to say 3 other authors. And we have that up on TPT if you are substituting this semester or thinking about substituting, because now that new law came out that if student teachers would like to substitute teach a couple of times during their placement, they can, but there are some rules and regulations. So please look that up with your department and with your college department and with your placement. But substitute teaching might be something that you are going to try. So if you are interested in that, you can go ahead and grab our TPT resource over on the EduMagic TPT store. I'll put a link in the show notes, and you can grab that free ebook. It is so jam-packed with tips and tricks, practical advice, and lots of encouragement for our substitute teachers out there.
And it could definitely help student teachers as well. A lot of the tips that are in there.
Oh, for sure. Dr. Shanae, this has been one of the best conversations that I have had. This has been so much fun. And I know that there's going to be listeners that have to rewind this episode because you have dropped so much information, and I have 3 pages of notes here. But let me quickly recap our after student teaching tips, and then we'll jump into how my listeners can get in touch with you. So while student teachers are wrapping up their experience and they're looking forward to their future, you had mentioned several things that they can do to continue to be an effective student teacher. One of those was reflecting upon your experiences. And I love that. Daily reflection, weekly reflection, monthly reflection. How are you glowing and how are you growing, and measuring that each month throughout your student teaching experience. Asking for feedback from your co-op. In fact, I would challenge you, if we go back to our earlier discussion about challenging our student teachers, I would challenge you to ask for feedback from a principal or a vice principal. Have them come in and observe a lesson, because man, oh man, that's going to make you stand out as a student teacher as well. Evaluate yourself throughout your experience. What did you enjoy? What did you want to do? What don't you want to do in your classroom? To reflect upon that. Continue to learn and use your resources, because we had talked about, as an educator, learning never stops. And I love how you had mentioned in our last one be open-minded to different job opportunities like substitute teaching, being a short or a long-term sub. And if you have no idea what we're talking about, you're going to go check out that TPT ebook over on the EduMagic store, and the link is in the show notes. So Dr. Shani Challenor, can you please share how my listeners can get in touch with you?
Yes, I am on Instagram. You can find me Sweet Life of Dr. Shani. So that's SUITE Life, LIFE, of Dr. DRSHANI.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. And is there anything else you'd like to share for our student teachers listening today before we end our conversation?
Yes. You are going to be fine. You are passionate. You are amazing. And as long as you love what you're doing and you're there for the right reasons, you're going to have success in this field. It is not easy, but it's not supposed to be. Everyone cannot be an educator. Everyone is not meant to be an educator. And I often say, you have to ask yourself, do I want to be a teacher where I just go to work every day and my summers are off, or am I an educator? And to me, there's a big difference. So that's the question every year that I ask myself. Is my goal to be just a teacher or an educator? And just be the teacher or educator who you needed when you were in school. So have a great year and good luck to you all. And I hope to see you guys.
And there you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.